gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you the first of our speakers, a very welcoming gentleman, the Bishop of Durham, Mr. Paul Butler. Also, one of the experts on the book that has been written about poverty 2,000 years ago. So, please, warm reception for him.
Thank you, Kath. Thank you all. I begin this morning deeply aware of a conversation that happened last night in Durham. I'm involved in an event in Durham all this week, and we were talking about money at it last night. And a homeless gentleman was in the front row, and during the event decided to express himself fairly fulsomely, and walked out. And afterwards I had a message that he was sat outside and that he wanted to apologise to me for the way I had behaved. So I went outside and sat on this cold bench next to him, and he took me by the hand and shook my hand, looked me in the eye and said, "You need to know you are an effing fake." And the person next to me said, "That's a very strange way to apologise." I won't tell you his name. And we then had a long conversation about why he thought that. So I arrived this morning deeply conscious that someone who is in deep poverty thinks I'm a complete fake. And I share that with you because I think actually I need to recognise that sometimes that's how it can easily be seen. That someone in a position of power and authority and wealth is understood. So I recognise that for some of you, that might be how you feel as you're looking at me right now. But it is a privilege to have been asked to be involved with this, because poverty and tackling poverty is deep in my gut, and it is deep inside the Christian faith and the church's commitment. Poverty is more than money and finance. And if we don't recognise that it is much more multi-layered than just about money and finance, then we will not succeed in tackling it well. But I've got fed up with hearing some people in positions of responsibility about tackling poverty who use that line as if money is not a significant factor. So we must talk about the money, but we must also talk about other layers. And one of the other layers for me is that very often it is people who live with poverty, who have riches of all kinds to offer back into the community and into the world. And we must work from the basis of the riches and the wealth that each of us have to be able to learn from one another and learn to find ways forward. I've been privileged to meet with people in all kinds of parts of the world living in poverty. And one of the most significant impacts, I think, in my own journey was sitting with a community in the hillside of Rwanda who had come together and had said, if we sit and wait for the world to come and answer our problems of poverty, we will sit and wait forever. We have to take responsibility for ourselves and see where we can go. And it was a remarkable community that had seen all kinds of development and flourishing happen because they decided to tackle it together and not to wait for people of power and influence. By the time I met this community, they had just had one of their members elected as a member of parliament to Rwanda for the very first time. And that had happened actually in the space of only about 5 or 6 years, because they had discovered enormous wealth within themselves. That was beginning to lead to a change. So I hope that out of listening to one another deeply, sharing with one another, hearing each other's stories, that we will discover the wealth that we have that can bring about the transformation of poverty, financial poverty, social poverty, the poverty of opportunity, which is one of the biggest issues that I think, if you think about the statistic that we had about young people, it's often the lack of opportunity which is the deepest poverty that many of us face. So thank you for asking me to be a part of this. I look forward to listening to more of the stories. I could talk for hours, but I think I've said